Welcome to Simple Answers with Dr. Z, a question and answer podcast produced by New Beginnings Assembly of God to help bring clarity and grow your relationship with Christ. If you have a question that you would like to have discussed by Dr. Stephen Zemanek and the team, please submit it to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope this podcast blesses you.
Welcome in to Simple Answers with Dr. Z. I am Travis Green. I have Dr. Z to my left. To his left is Randy Green. He is a reverend, and on your screen, it's right, left, left. But anyway, we are back for another episode. They continue to bring us back. We are having so much fun with this. We are answering questions that you have submitted, and what could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong?
Well, before we get started, I do want to, as we usually do, thank our crew behind the scenes.
Yes.
You look at this setup, and you go, they must have a huge crew.
Huge crew.
But it's two. It is two. It is the Prabhus. It is John Prabhu. And tonight, we have the special honor of having Jessel Prabhu. So we appreciate all the hard work that they are giving.
Very rare experience.
Very rare. He has a smile almost as good as John's, not quite as good as Talisa's. But we want your questions sent to us. We have Simple Answers with Dr. Z at gmail.com, where you can send those questions. We also have a tiny URL code, tinyurl.com/Simple Answers with Dr. Z. Those are two ways you can get in touch with us. That second one, they can send those questions anonymously, which we all know is our favorite.
Yes.
Favorite
we love Mr.
audience.
or Mrs. Anonymous.
Yes.
So if this gets bigger, will the URL get bigger? Or is it
No, it's
There's
always
gonna
going to be
be
a tiny
tiny.
URL. Yeah, we will never go to a big URL. Tiny URLs only for this podcast, and we will keep it at that. That's the last question we get from you.
Sounds fair to me.
So you're not allowed to submit questions.
So let's get started. Melinda asked this question, and guys, I'm going to just fire out of the gates with these two questions. But first question is from Melinda. Divine intervention is a phrase of the day when it comes to the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Yes, we're going to talk politics. No, we're not. If that is the case, then what kind of God do you all serve that you would save one man but allow another one to be killed? How is Trump's life more important than a man who was murdered protecting his family? Pretty heavy question, but I think it's a question that obviously someone's interested in, Melinda. So thank you for sending in the question, Melinda. But why is one man's life more important than another's?
Well, Melinda, thank you for bringing this up. It's one that I've discussed with a few different people, and it's one I think more Christians should actually consider. A lot of times as Christians, we sort of have our little mindset, especially, God forbid, when it comes to politics. We're almost as bad as anybody. This one's from God. This one's from the devil. And there's no gray area. And don't get me wrong, I know who I'm voting for and I know why. But when we put an individual, whether it had been Kamala, if she'd have been in that spot, or Trump, who happened to be in the spot, we put them in a position of being God's special messenger that somehow God's willing to let, was he a firefighter, I believe, die instead of Trump. I am happy that Trump didn't die. If Kamala had been there, I'd have been happy she didn't die. But if God was doing divine intervention, it would have been very easy for God to have also made the bullet miss a firefighter who was just there just to support what he believed. And what it really comes down to is the issue of evil in the world. Why, if there's a God, why are there bad things? And there is no easy answer to this, and I'm not trying to get out of it. There's just not. When you read the literature, when you listen to intelligent people talk, we try to wrap everything up in a nice little box. This is Jesus, and this is you, and this is eternity, and everything just works out great. But the real world effect of sin is what we see today. God created the world to be without sin. He did not create evil. Evil is the absence of following God's directives. And so when we see from the Garden of Eden up to the shooting of an innocent man, again, if you're one of those weird, freaky people that Trump is the devil, you don't think he's innocent. But he didn't deserve to be shot. When you look at all of the evil, why does this child have good parents and that one doesn't? Well, why is this parent get the phone call, hey, your daughter's had this horrific experience, and that one didn't? When we look at the reality of evil in the world, it should push us back to Jesus and the cross, because God's answer to evil, in my opinion, isn't, well, it's all going to work out in the end, let's just all pray and go to heaven. He literally sent his son to come and live in an evil world, experience evil being poured on him, and then to die so that we could be free from evil in our own lives. Not the effects of evil from other people, but we don't have to be evil. We get to be a light, a positive force pushing culture to change. And so since we're talking politics, I'll just throw it in there. This will be my final podcast, by the way.
Oh, boy.
Since we're pushing politics tonight, yes, mute. Christians have a mandate to bring the gospel principles into our culture. And one of those is justice. And I know in our culture since 2020 forward, justice has taken some weird turns, and you can burn down a whole city block and call it justice. That's not justice. Justice is making sure that people who commit crimes pay for those crimes, making sure that victims are, to the best of our ability, recompensed for what has happened to them. Another is grace. We're to push grace. And so regardless of who we're voting for, we need to be gracious in the way we speak about the other person. Instead of calling the other one the devil or Satan's little helper or whatever your favorite term is, they are people. You disagree with them. I disagree with one of them wholeheartedly. But when I speak about that one, I try to speak about the policies of the person rather than making fun of the person. And we all have things you can make fun of very easily. Both candidates do. But when we deal with why did God allow, I think what we need to look at is the fact that God is there, that's all that had happened. If there was no check on evils, we would see far more devastation that day, far more devastation on the school shootings, far more devastations with the riots that we had here in Missouri and Ferguson. The fact that there are checks on the evil is proof there's God and proof that God's people are living by the principles of the gospel.
I agree. And I also think that, we look at Job, look at all what he went through, and you wonder, well, why did all this happen to Job? Why didn't this happen to, somebody else, in the Bible? Why did he lose everything?
3 of his friends, we'd all been happy if it happened to one
Yes,
of them.
we would have, yeah. But, we see those things, and it's hard, to understand. But as you pointed out, that's sin. That's the effect. We always have cause and effect. Well, we have sin in the world, but you said it perfectly. If it was Christ, and right now we have the Holy Spirit that does hold back and does have that protection over different reasons or different things why they happen. We don't know why. God is just in all that he does, but he's also mysterious and he's perfect in what he does. So even though we won't have all the answers, and I don't know if we will in the end of time, but I know I'm one that always says I'm going to ask him. I'm probably going to be so happy when I get there. I'm not going to know what.
We're all
say.
going to be so shocked when you get there. We're not going to.
Yeah, we're going to be shocked. Yeah, everybody's going to be shocked when they see me. But it's going to be such a glorious time. But those are fair questions, and it's good to see people think like that. But we also need to pray more about it and read the Bible, and we'll start to get understanding. And when the Holy Spirit comforts us, we start to understand.
I think that's the big one, is the Holy Spirit, working within you to try to understand those situations. Because it's hard. I mean, you all have raised kids. I am currently raising kids, and they come up with some questions that you're like, oh wow, like that makes you step back. I get to work with the youth here, and the same thing. They ask questions that you're like, it makes you pause. But it's good to ask those questions. But I think something that I did want to focus on, and not focus on, but I want to reiterate that that Pastor said right at the beginning of this is the question of divine intervention and all that. We do, as Christians and as followers of Christ, need to be careful about how we use those kind of terms, because when you talk about divine intervention, you are setting someone else above others, and there's only one that we set above all, right? No offense, this isn't a political statement, but it's not Donald Trump. So we do need to be careful about how we're phrasing those things. But good question. Thank you again, Melinda, for that, and we'll keep those moving right along right after we take this quick break here on Simple Answers with Dr. Z.
You're listening to Simple Answers with Dr. Z, a podcast produced by New Beginnings Assembly of God in Maryland Heights, Missouri. If you have a question that you would like to have discussed by Dr. Stephen Zemanek and the team, please submit it to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. And now, here's Pastor
All right, welcome back to Simple Answers with Dr. Z. I'm Travis Green again. Randy Green, Dr. Z. That is Stephen Zemanek. We are answering your questions that you have sent in. I was trying to make a past tense a past tense. We started off with...
Just sent it on those in.
We started off with a banger, and we're going to keep them going. Our first question, got a good response, so I'm going to go ahead and ask this one from Courtney. Courtney, boy, girl, either way, we'll ask it this way. I hear a lot about the separation of church and state around election time every 4 years. It feels like a way for some to set their morals aside and vote for their other interests. What does the separation of church and state really mean? Wasn't this country founded on God?
I know this is your area.
Were you good in history? I mean, well, so separation from church and state is more of it's not the separation of the church from the state, but more of like the church controlling the state, wouldn't you think? And that's how I've always taken it, because used to, as whenever Great Britain, before the United States became the United States, they were ruled by the church, and there's a lot of communist countries that they are the church, and so there is a separation from church and state in that area, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't pray and that we shouldn't have the 10 Commandments on our courtroom walls, and I think it gets a little bit too out of hand when we start saying that, and then we start taking prayer out of school, because now we've seen, the effect of that.
And even I think in this question, talking about separating, it doesn't mean that we should separate our morals from the state, right? Like, it doesn't mean like all of a sudden now, we should completely separate what we believe in church, what we hear in church, what we believe about, our Christian walk, and say, well, I'm going to take that and set that aside and vote the way, I feel. I think it's okay to keep those two things together.
Yeah, and it's impossible to separate them. I mean, we have...
Unless you're doing it the wrong.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, the idea of religion and our public life being separate is a relatively new Western civilization creation. When you look back through history, all the way through history, religion and your public life were inseparable. You lived out what you believed, and that caused a few wars, so it's not always great, but your religion was expressed in the way you voted, in the way you lived, in the way you treated your neighbors. And it isn't until you get into a more modern time, global history-wise, in the Western world where we become so intelligent, that we've decided to separate the two, and what we end up with is sort of an odd dichotomy, to where we can go to bed at night saying, well, I believe abortion is wrong, but I'm going to vote for somebody who believes in abortion because I'm making this up, they're going to give me a 2% tax break. Or I believe that people shouldn't beat their wives, but I'm going to vote for so-and-so even though I know he's beating his wife because I really like this policy. And what we've done is not, on one hand, we've separated our morals from our public life, but in reality, we've actually shown in public life what our morals really are. You can say you love God. You can say you believe in life. You can say you believe in justice and mercy and equity. You can say that. But if you're not living that in your daily life, it is a complete fabrication. It's a lie. Your religious beliefs are shown in how you live publicly. And so the separation of church and state, as Randy noted, was designed so that the church didn't put too much control over the state, and that the state didn't step in and create a state church like we have in England. And so there's some value there, but in our modern day, especially with the politics being as insane as they are right now, we've taken this phrase, separation of church and state, and turned it into something it was never meant to be. It's no praying in school, no 10 Commandments, don't go around the flag on that day when the teenagers stand around the flag and pray. You can't do any of that, which I find ironic because when you go to prison, you get a Bible if you want one, and you can get a chaplain to pray with you want one. So go figure that out. Shouldn't we start early and avoid that? Just a thought. But my point is this. We have all these great sayings, separation of church and state, but there is no such thing. What you believe will be shown in how you treat your spouse, how you treat your children, how you treat people in your neighborhood, how you treat people that are on the side of the road with that cardboard sign, the way you talk about politicians, the way you vote. You are a religious person. Even if you're an atheist, you're a religious person. There are a set of morals that you hold to, and they will be seen in how you live publicly. I will get off my soapbox.
No, I think it is such a fascinating topic, and it's something that you obviously we could spend hours on, right?
Yes.
No, I mean, I personally
have very few
cannot.
words to share.
But I go back to what you said and about how you present yourself too, and talking about the effect that has on other people. And that's something, I recently had the chance to fill in for you on a teaching on a Wednesday night. That was kind of my I put everybody right to sleep. It was great. But that was kind of my whole point in going around what I was trying to bring forth was, hey, to be a disciple of Jesus, you need to be careful because there's a whole nother thing that comes with it. It's not just the discipleship for yourself and your life. It's the discipleship that you're showing others. And there's certain, and especially when it comes to politics in this country, there's certain reactions that you have towards politics that is going to spurn someone else, and it's going to potentially cost them faith.
Yeah.
Their
We've
faith.
seen that in this world today. I mean, I've lost friends, and people have told me.
You had friends?
That
I have
had
none.
Friends. That's
I
why I
have
don't
none.
have any now. But they found out the way that I vote or how I support something, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I can't. And I don't think politics used to be like that. But now it's kind of like, the more, religious people say you are, which it shouldn't be about religion, it should be about us following Christ, right? But I know that, whenever we serve God, we shouldn't separate that from how we vote. I always look at Daniel. You know how Daniel was, with Nebuchadnezzar. I'm sure he didn't agree with everything he did, but yet he
if
supported.
he did, he would be a horrible prophet.
But you see my point?
Yeah, because Neb was a mess.
He was.
You and Dad go way back.
Oh, we go way back. We roomed together in college.
We asked him all those questions because he knows. He knew
First-hand
David.
knowledge.
Knew Dave? Oh, that's right. I forgot Dave.
It's Dave.
Yeah.
It's on first hand. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar.
And Job. You all call him Job.
And yeah, he's seen Nebuchadnezzar go through his 7 years of.
Oh, it was a lot of fun times.
Did you try to jump into the furnace?
Well, I was going to, but I was doing Instagram, getting it all on there.
You're doing your reels.
But I know we're running out of time, but Christians we are called to be engaged in politics. Nothing wrong with that. But we need to be engaged in politics from a Christian perspective, which is to understand that no matter who's in the White House or who's in a Senate seat, and I know they make a difference, the real change that's going to take place in society is going to take place when we begin to live out what we actually believe instead of just saving it for a Sunday morning where we all raise our hands and go, well, hallelujah.
With other people who
With
are
other,
like-minded,
yes,
right?
yeah. My wife and I talked with a gentleman who's in a gang, and we were in Chicago this week. Great story. Basically got shot in the leg, had a job, and now he's back on the street slinging, making money incorrectly. And so we get to talk with him about 20 minutes, and my wife goes over to him and says, and he's a younger kid, says, can I give you a hug? And I mean, here's this guy, I mean, he's not playing. And he says, I would love that. And so here's this middle-aged, adorable lady coming over and just hugging this active gang member. And then she told him, you need to call your mama. You need to call your mama. Well, that's her morality being expressed to somebody. And in our political environment, not supposed to do that.
Yeah, living it out is what we are called to do. Living out our faith in all that we do, whether it's in our the way we vote at the ballot box, the way we talk about politics, the way we talk about other things. I think it's something that's super important, and it's something we've really lost in this country at times, and it's disheartening. I joked on Wednesday night when I was able to fill in. I'm an apolitical person. Truly and honestly, I'm the person at the family reunion that gets this side going and gets this side going because I know what side they voted for, and I'm going to pick the other side just to get them fighting.
Never get political.
But I am an apolitical person. But I think the reason I've been spurned towards being apolitical is because of just the dynamic that is at play with that, and you don't see Jesus in that. And we should always see Jesus, show Jesus in what we do, and see Jesus in how we react. All right, well, that does it here for Simple Answers with Dr. Z. I'm not Dr. Z, that's him. I'm Travis Green, that's Randy Green. We promise it's not a politic podcast, but I wanted to make sure.
Vote for Steve.
Pedro?
Dr.
Vote for Pedro.
I wanted to make sure that, I kept these two awake. So we threw politics in there this time. But we want to take all your questions. And once again, you can send those to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. Until next time, thanks for listening or watching.
Thank you for listening to Simple Answers with Dr. Z. If you have a question that you would like to have discussed by Dr. Steven Zemanek and the team, please submit it to simpleanswerswithdrz@gmail.com. As Pastor Steve likes to say, whatever you're doing today, remember this: because of Jesus, life is good today.